Alright, so today we are going to be covering the skin. So first off, let me get a little pointer out here. With the skin there's going to be three major layers. There's going to be the epidermis. Epi is in above, so that'll be the most superficial layer. That is right here. We will have the dermis, which is the middle layer, which goes from here all the way down to this fatty tissue or subcutaneous tissue here. And then we have the hypodermis. So the hypodermis is this region here. Alright, so our epidermis will be our protective outer layer. Our dermis is going to be our layer of support tissue, and your hypodermis or superficial fascia will be the deepest layer of the integumentary system. The hypodermis is going to be made mostly of adipose tissue, and it's going to be there pretty much to kind of connect the dermis and epidermis to the stuff below, and it will also be there as like a little protective barrier. Okay, talking a little bit about our epidermis. It is going to be keratinized, stratified squamous epithelial cells. What does that mean? That means that it will be dead crystallized cells, and stratified squamous epithelium means that they will be flattened square cells found in layers of two or more. In most instances there will be many layers of them. Within the epidermis we're going to have a couple different cell types that we're going to find. We're going to have keratinocytes, and melanocytes. So we said that your cells are keratinized. So keratinocytes produce something called keratin. What keratin is it's a crystal-like substance that will help harden your dead cells, and it will help with the protection from the external environments. Melanocytes will produce this stuff right here called melanin, and melanin is going to help out with your skin pigment. The more melanin production you have, the darker your skin pigment. The less melanin production you have, the lighter your skin pigment will be. And then we're going to have these epidermal dendritic cells. These will be macrophages that will be around in case anything ever passes through your skin that shouldn't be there. We'll call them antigens, or foreign bodies that pass through your skin that shouldn't be there. Those macrophages will eat them and bring them to your immune system and say, hey, watch out, this stuff is trying to infect us, let's get rid of it before anything happens. And then we get these things called corpuscles. These are touch receptors. So I'm going to skip back to the last slide. Do you see these yellow things right here? These are corpuscles. There's different types of corpuscles to feel different things. These right here are called Paxinian corpuscles, but based on what type of corpuscle it is, it will tell you what type of touch you're going to find. Okay, so looking at it, here is our epidermis right here. Okay, this is our epidermis right here. Your epidermis is going to be broken into numerous layers. It is going to be broken into the stratum corneum, granulosum, spinosum, and basale, or basal layer. So let's start from bottom up. The basal layer is called the basal layer because basal means like basement. It is the lowest or deepest layer of all of them. This is going to be one layer of actively dividing cells. So that in this picture off to the right would be like these cells right here. And this right here, it would be these cells right here. This is going to be the only layer of cells that divides. These cells will have a rich blood supply from the dermis. All the other cells in the further layers out will no longer have a blood supply from the dermis. What that means is these cells will not be getting regular nutrition, and they will soon die. Okay, but these basal cells, what they do is they divide, and then as they age, they get pushed up. The ones that are meant to die and go off to the outer layers get pushed up. Our next layer up is going to be our stratum spinosum. It's going to be several layers of keratinocytes. Alright, they are going to be held together by something called desmosomes. Those guys are just going to be like little spot welds. The big thing here is that we're going to have keratin production here. So what we do is we start, so that would be represented in this picture from like here to here. Alright, in this picture, be like here to here. So what's going to happen is we have some nice living cells, we get some keratin inside of them, and they are going to start to get pushed on. The next layer is going to be our stratum granulosum. Okay, what happens in the stratum granulosum is the cells, they haven't had nourishment or supply for quite some time, and they're starting to die. So what happens first is some of the organelles start to die, they dehydrate, and they're starting to flatten out. Okay, and as these cells start to die and flatten out, they finally get pushed off into our stratum corneum. By this point, the cells are completely dead, they are flattened, and the keratin has now become crystallized. So it's like a nice protective outer layer. It's usually going to be a good 20 to 30 layers of dead cells. So if you have your arm, I'm looking at my arm right now, and you scratch it, each time you scratch it, you're removing some layers of cells. You're probably getting rid of some dead cells. So what's going to be happening there is you have enough layers of these that if you get rid of them, it doesn't really hurt anything. And if you even dig down into like the granulosum, you don't feel much discomfort. But when you really scratch and scratch and scratch until you're raw, that's usually, and you're not bleeding yet, you're going to be down to like that basal layer. So the reason why that's important is that you will have these Merkel and Paxinian cells that come right up there, and they're pain sensitive. So if you get that deep, you start to feel some discomfort from it. Okay, so with our layers of cells, we have the stratum basal or basale. Okay, it's going to be our deepest layer. It's going to be anchored to the dermis. Like we said, it's a single layer of cells. It is described as stem cells because these cells are going to be actively dividing constantly. Another name for them is the stratum germinativum, and the reason for that is because the cells are dividing so quickly. So the usual journey, let's switch back a slide, the usual journey from our basal layer to our corneal layer is going to be about 20 to 45 days, 25 to 45 days. And the process is, like we said, the cells divide, it's alive, it picks up some keratin sites. Here it's starting to dehydrate, and here it is completely dead and crystallized, and now it is a nice protective layer for you against the outside world. Okay, like we said, journey is about 25 days. Next layer, our stratum spinosum. Another name for it is the prickly layer. Okay, what we're going to find a lot in there is going to be our melanin granules, so we'll find melanocytes in there. And like we mentioned earlier, the more melanin production you have, the darker your skin pigmentation will be. Okay, working our way out. Stratum granulosum. Okay, we're going to have our keratinocytes. We'll have 3 to 5 layers of cells. Okay, and we've already spoke about these. Let's go back here. Okay, so we'll have 3 to 5 layers of cells. They're going to be flattening out, dehydrating, and dying, and working their way out to the stratum corneum. And then we have this extra layer here. It's called the stratum lucidum, or lucidum. It's only going to be found in the palms of your hand and the soles of your feet. It's going to be almost, if you saw it in person, it would look almost like a piece of cellophane or fatty tissue in there. And the big thing is that it's a few rows of dead keratinocytes. It's going to be the reason why those certain areas of your body have a little bit thicker skin, and they can really get a nice big callus on them so easily. Okay, and then our outermost layer, called the stratum corneum. Another name for it is the horny layer because the very tips of it look like it has these horn-like projections coming from it. This will be 20 to 30 rows of dead cells, and the big function of it is it's going to be there to protect us from our outside environment. You have an armor of dead crystallized cells protecting you from your outside world, and you're constantly sloughing them off, and that's going to be the reason why you are constantly producing new ones at the same time. Okay, so our next layer is going to be our dermis. Your dermis is going to be a strong, flexible layer, and it will be there to help support the epidermis. there's going to be two main layers of it. There will be the papillary layer, and there will be the reticular layer. So looking at this next slide, I'm going to pull up a little red pen here, and I'll do my best to outline the papillary layer. You see this super thin line here? This darker line that I'm kind of following? This is the papillary layer. If you notice, the hair follicle is an invagination of the papillary layer into the reticular layer. So we already talked about reticulo or reticular. Reticular means support. Papillary or papilla means nipple. So these are like little nipple-like projections going into the reticular layer. Okay, there will be a very rich blood supply there. Where'd I go? Sorry. There will be a very rich blood supply in the papillary layer, and it's going to help us support our innermost layer of our epidermis, our basal layer. Within the papillary layer, we're going to have areolar connective tissue, okay, and we'll have these little papillae. What are we going to find in them? Capillary loops. That is our rich blood supply right there. So I was telling you about the rich blood supply in them. So capillary loops. Another thing we're going to find is free nerve endings. So when I was telling you, if you scratch through and you get to that basal layer of cells, if you were scratching your arm too much, that's going to be why you're going to be getting pain and discomfort there. Okay. With our reticular layer, that's going to be most of the thickness, alright? It's going to be very, very dense, and it's going to have all of our support tissue. So we're going to go back here for a second. We're going to look at it. Let's look at all the support tissue we find in this reticular layer. Let me get a little pen and I'll dot some stuff. So first off, we're going to have some bigger blood vessels, so we'll have arteries. Another one we'll have here is some veins going through. We have nerves coming through here. It doesn't show, but we'll have lymphatic vessels passing through here. We have our hair roots in here, and we have our sebaceous glands, which are right here. We have our eccrine glands. So we have all this support tissue that helps out with the skin. I'm going to mention this now so I don't forget about it later. But do you see this little muscle here? It's called an erector pili. The function of this muscle is when you get goosebumps, this muscle contracts and it pulls the hair so it stands up. And if you think about it, the time you usually get goosebumps is when you are cold. So there's actually a reason why you're getting goosebumps. When you get cold, you get this little contraction of this little muscle to hold up the hair, because in animals with thicker or more dense hair, that hair lifts up and it helps trap in the heat, and it helps make a barrier between you and the outside world. So that's kind of an important little thing there. Okay, next one, we're going to have skin markings. So we'll have friction ridges and cleavage lines. So friction ridges, the best thing and the easiest way to see this is if you look at your fingers, your little fingerprints. Those are there to help give you friction. So if you take your hand and you want to grip onto something, it can actually grip onto a table and help you not slide against something. Cleavage lines are going to be named based off of, if you're looking off to the right here, based off of the way your skin is lying down. These are kind of important, and these are helpful for surgeons, because if they cut along these cleavage lines, you are less likely to have scarring and you will have much quicker healing. Okay, so next one, skin color. So with your skin color, you can have 3 pigments. You've seen brown people, you've seen golden tan people, and you've seen reddish people. So dark brown people are going to have mostly melanin. People who have that golden tan type of color, they'll have a nice mixture of the melanin and the keratin. And then people who kind of are yellowy in tint or orange in tint, those will be more keratin color. And hemoglobin, that's going to give you the pink hue of your skin. So when you think of like a rosy red-cheeked Irish man, that would be like hemoglobin. Alright, so coming off of our skin, we're going to have some appendages, alright? These are all going to come out of the epidermis. These will include our sweat glands, our oil glands, our hairs, hair follicles, and nails. We'll go through these one by one. Okay. First off, with our sweat glands, there's going to be 2 main types. We have eccrine and we have epicrine. Our eccrine sweat glands, those guys are good. Excuse me. Those guys are going to be the ones you find in your palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, your forehead. You get some of these guys in you'll get some of these guys, a couple of them in your armpits too. These will be mostly watery sweat. They do not produce smelly sweat, stuff like that. They're going to be mostly water. They'll have, like we're listing off right here, a little bit of sodium chloride, some antibodies, and some other stuff going on there, but it's going to be mostly water. Our next ones are going to be our apocrine glands. Okay, apocrine glands are going to be releasing like thicker, more oily type substances. These substances can have an effect on, these substances can be more smelly in nature. So if you have somebody and they're sweaty and they're getting stinky or their sweat smells funny, these are going to be more the type of ones that they do. These apocrine glands, if you notice when you don't shower for a couple days, your hair gets all oily and greasy. That's what's going to be making your hair all greasy, are these apocrine glands right here. So there'll be ducts that connect to hair follicles. An animal that has a lot of these are otters. Okay, so otters swim in the water. They actually have hair. And what happens is they go in the water, they get soaking wet, they could be in there in the dead of winter and they don't get cold. The reason why is you have these apocrine gland secretions, and they make this almost oil layer that makes their fur coat water resistant. So they go under the water, their skin's not getting wet, their skin's not getting cold. It's completely protected. And then we have some other different specialized type of apocrine glands down here. So those two specialized apocrine glands would be ceruminous glands. Cerumen means earwax. That is a fun special name for earwax. So those would be the glands in your ears that make earwax. And then other ones are mammary glands. So mammary glands are going to be specialized apocrine glands that produce breast milk. Okay, so here we're looking at a sebaceous gland, alright, connected up into a hair follicle. Okay, you can see there's lots of cells here. It goes right into a duct, right onto the hair follicle. Here we're gonna have eccrine or merocrine glands. So these will make more of a watery like solution, and they'll be going into this little duct, and they will be released. This will be more of a watery secretion. This will be more like an oily, thick secretion. Did I skip one? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I just got sucked into a conversation by these students out here.
Mine?
No, it is Dr. Hamill. She's a vet.
Oh, she's veterinarian?
So
is she an idiot?
She's having, they're still on the microscope. We started week 4 in AP1.
Okay, so our sebaceous glands. These guys will be widely distributed. They're mostly, like we were saying, they're mostly going to be around your hair follicles. On the past slide, I left out this. They function from puberty onwards.
Okay.
Function from puberty onwards. Yeah. Why is she going so crazy with
this? Is from our microbiology lab manual.
Okay. Why is she doing this?
So look at here. Here's what they have to report on: fungi, protozoa, bacteria.
What's she doing?
Algae.
Is this her first time? All right, I gotta record.
All right, sorry.
You're fine. Okay, so like we were saying, these become active at puberty, and these will actually make some pheromones. As if you've ever heard of how there's like you have that special smell and you can attract somebody else, those are pheromones, and these guys will be active then. Another thing is that if you notice when you have a little kid and they sweat, they typically don't smell from their sweat. If they're smelly when they're sweating, the reason why they're smelly is because there's a warm, moist environment for bacteria to grow. As you get a little bit older and your sweat starts to get stinky, the reason why is because you're starting to get these secretions. Okay. Another thing when they become active at puberty is also you start to get pimples. So you start to get oil production, you clog your pores, you have a nice layer of oil on your face that is allowing bacterial growth or trapping bacteria within your glands. Okay. With our hairs, the big thing for your hairs is they are there to protect you. With animals, they have their hair, and that will help hold in the warmth or heat. With us, they are there to help you. They'll have very, very fine sense of touch. So if you have a mosquito land on you, a lot of times you don't notice it, but if it lands on your on a hair on your arm, you notice it right away because it has a very, very fine sense of touch. Another thing they're going to be there, just generalized protection. They're going to protect against abrasions or scraps and scratches and stuff like that. Where do you find hair? Just think of a hairy man. When you think of a hairy man, that is all the places you can find hair. So you can find it everywhere on your body except the palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, your lips, your nipples, and certain portions of the external genitalia. So hair, as we were saying, the way the hair shaft was made is it was going to be an invagination. Let's go back up here. Let's go back. It was going to be a vagination of the papillary layer of the dermis. Okay, and as you notice with that invagination of the papillary of the dermis, you're also going to get your whole epidermal layer coming in with it. That is very important to note as we come back to where we were. Alright, so we're seeing here we have an invagination of the papillary layer, and we also have some of the dermis. So what's really going to happen here is these cells inside of here are going to be very similar, almost pretty much the same as your basal layer. So the main place for cell division is going to be right here, the hair papilla, so hair nipple. This is going to be where the hair is actively dividing, and as it dies, it gets pushed up this way. So right here it die and it get pushed up this way. It will make a little tube or a little glass looking straw. The reason why your hair is actually going to have color in it is because it's going to have different pigments in it. It can have yellow or rust or brown or black, stuff like that, and those will give your hair their color, and those will be filled inside of those little tubes. So when people start getting their white or gray type of hairs, the reason why they're getting those white or gray type of hairs is decrease in pigment, and when it's completely decreased pigment, it turns into white looking hair. So if you took a bunch of empty glasses, like glasses you drink out of, and put them all next to each other, they kind of have that whitish appearance. Imagine if those were super thin like your hair. That's how your hair gets that white appearance going to it. Okay, so here we're looking. With the hair, there's going to be an internal layer. It'll almost be like a little tube. Okay, I think of it as like a little straw there. Okay, so our hair follicle, we already talked about it. It extends from the epidermal layer into the dermis. It is an invagination of the papillary layer. It's going to have two layers. It's going to have an outer connective sheet to connect it to the dermis, and it's going to have an inner layer of epithelial cells. Okay, this inner layer of epithelial cells will be actively dividing. It'll be separated by a glassy membrane, and that is pretty much there as a protective mechanism once again. We have our hair bulb, our hair papilla, our hair matrix, and our hair follicle. Okay, your hair follicle is going to be where you have nerve stimulation. So when a fly lands on your arm or a mosquito lands on your arm and it moves the hair because it has a big lever to help increase stuff there, this is gonna be where the nerve sensation goes. If that gets agitated, the arrector pili that we spoke of earlier, let's go back a couple slides, the arrector pili right here gets activated and it pulls and it stands that hair up. So you notice there is something going on there. Alright, and we're going to go to the next one. Okay, so we have some different types of hair. There is vellus hair and there is terminal hair. Vellus hair is going to be like fine pale hair on the body of a child or an adult female. So when you think of that peach fuzz type of hair, that is vellus hair. Terminal hair, that's going to be like when you think of hair, that's terminal hair. That's the hair that you're going to find as your eyebrows. That'll be on your head. It's in your armpits. It can be on all that and all the other places. So we're going to talk more now about some hair growth. So with hair growth, there's going to be some different phases. We have anagen, catagen, and telogen. So anagen is going to be the growth phase of the hair that takes a long time. Alright, this is going to be on your scalp. These hairs are going to be growing in this phase for many years. So do you notice that most people lose their hair? The reason why people are losing their hair is that these phases kind of go from A to B to C, A to B to C. So for 6 or so years your hair is growing and it's healthy and it's just normal. What happens? That hair decides it needs to take a rest, so it takes a rest and it doesn't grow much, and then the hair falls out. Alright? Once the hair falls out, it starts over again and it starts growing. If you think about your eyebrows, if you grab your eyebrows right now and you give a little tug on them, not even very hard, you'll likely pull a hair or two out of them. Why? Because this whole process for hair on the eyebrows is much quicker. And those hairs are going to only be in this phase for a couple months. And they stop growing, and then what they do is they fall out much quicker. Okay, so alopecia, that is male pattern baldness, or hair, not male pattern baldness, sorry. Alopecia is thinning of the hair. For males, it would be called male pattern baldness, and just here's some different ways the hairs are going to be looking when they are thinning. Usually, when you get thinning of the hair, it is going to be genetic in nature. Sometimes it could be because of an exposure to certain chemicals or diseases. A great example could be chemotherapy, but that is going to give you like a true frank baldness. That will mean you're just going to lose everything. Okay, next one, our nail. So your nail is going to have some different parts to it, alright? We got this thing right here, which is called the luna, or lanule. There's different names for it. We have our body of our nail, and then we get the free edge of the nail. So the free edge of the nail is like if somebody tries to claw you or scratch you, that's going to be the free edge of the nail. These are going to be modified skin cells. Once again, this will be made up of the same dead skin cells that your skin is made up of, but they have been changed so you have a protective layer there. Okay, so overview. Some functions of our integumentary system. I decided to do flip lecture for my classes, so they're gonna have lecture online and we'll just have chatty time in class and do stuff like that. So I'm gonna let them try it for a test or two.
Was it your idea to have the 1 hour on campus for the hybrid?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. That's how it originally started, but now that I'm doing this, I might just...
Well, that's what, I mean, personally, I would do it like, yes, come on in. Miss.
There's no examples in second A and B, by the way.
So, what these are going to be is, the first big one is going to be protection. And the way we're going to protect the skin is going to be with chemicals, physical barriers, and biological barriers. So for the chemicals, that's going to be stuff where we will have our acid mantle. The gist of what it is you'll have secretions that have a low pH, and that will be low enough that it will kill off many bacteria or not allow them to easily divide. With our physical barriers, these are going to be able to have almost waterproof barriers, so we can't let most fluids in, and it won't let organic solvents or stuff like that be able to easily pass through the skin. And then the last one is going to be biological barriers, so stuff like macrophage. So those will be there if anything starts to penetrate, the macrophage will be in there to actually eat and kill whatever tries to pass. Next, it helps us with body temperature. Your skin is in contact with the outside world. That is your body's whole contact with the outside world. If your skin has increased blood flow, that will allow you to lose heat to your surrounding environment. If your skin has decreased blood flow, that's going to allow you to conserve heat and prevent from losing heat to your external environment. So what we would do is we would have vasodilation of our dermal blood vessels, and that would increase blood flow to the area, and that would increase the likelihood of sweating, and that will help your body cool off. If we wanted to retain heat and it's cold outside, we get vasoconstriction of those blood vessels, decreased blood flow to the skin, and then we're going to be able to conserve the heat by keeping it deep within your body. Next one is cutaneous sensations. The big thing is that you have touch you have temperature and pain receptors, and those will be there to protect you from hurting yourself. It'll help you prevent yourself from damaging the skin and the dermal layers. The biggest metabolic function that we're going to have is the production of vitamin D, and the biggest importance that we're going to speak of in this class for vitamin D is going to be your calcium metabolism and absorption of calcium. Your skin can also be a blood reservoir. It can hold up to 5% of the blood's volume, and it can help you rid your nitrogenous waste. So you can get rid of nitrogen and salt or sodium byproducts. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about skin cancers. So most skin cancers are benign, which means they're not dangerous. The big things that are going to make you more likely to get some sort of skin cancer or skin lesion is going to be exposure to UV radiation and frequent irritation. So if you keep cutting or irritating an area or burning an area with some sort of chemical, you're more likely to get a lesion. And the reason why is that you have these cells and you're trying to make them divide even more than normal, and you're exposing their DNA to poor chemicals or radiation, stuff like that. They're going to be more likely to make some sort of mistake. So there will be three types: basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanomas. Basal cell carcinomas are very, very common, but they are typically benign. They typically don't cause many problems. They can be very ugly, but they don't cause many problems. Squamous cell carcinomas, these ones are a little less common, but they can cause problems, and melanomas are the dangerous one that we've all heard of. Here's a nice picture of a basal cell carcinoma, and usually they're cured just by cutting it off. Squamous cell, once again, here's our squamous cell off to the right. They're typically going to occur on the hands and on the scalp. They can happen on the ears too. These guys, they typically could be surgically removed. Sometimes you need some radiation therapy with them. And then melanoma. These ones are the dangerous guys. These ones are going to be a multicolored lesion, and they will, if it's larger than a pencil eraser, you want to go in and you want to get this sucker checked out quickly, because you do not want this to grow. It can become a large problem. Okay, with the melanoma, they remember is the ABCDE or ABCDS, the ABCDs. Okay, so first off, is there H symmetry? Are the two sides of the thing the same size? This guy right here, look at this, is nice and smooth. This is all rigid. Next one is the border exhibit indentions. Let's look here again. Look at, there's all these little indentions along the border. Next one, is it black, brown, or tan? That guy's got those deep blacks and the brown colors in it. And the diameter, is it bigger than a pencil eraser? And the last one is elevation. So is it elevated? Is it a bump? All right. I need to video.
It's just Wednesday, right?
So with burns, we're going to have different types of burns. You could get burns from heat, electricity, radiation, or certain chemicals. For example, you burn your hand on something that's too hot, the temperature is hot, it will burn your hand. Electricity, if you grab something electrical, you have a high current going in there, it will cause damage once again to your epidermal layers. The gist of what's happening when you get a burn is you are going to damage the tissues, which means proteins are denatured. Think about when you take a steak and you put it on the grill and those cells change colors. Those cells are being denatured, okay? And if they're denatured enough, then it leads to cell death. So once there's cell death, we need to get rid of those dead cells and begin the healing process. When you get a burn, the biggest problems that people are going to come into are usually electrolyte imbalance or fluid imbalance, such as dehydration. This will have a direct effect with kidney shutdown, and the other big thing is infection. Infection, because you have lots of openings, and this is an easy pathway for unwanted microorganisms to get into your body. Okay, so if we have a partial thickness burn, that would be considered a first degree or second degree burn. With the first degree burn, you're typically just going to get a little bit of swelling, redness, and maybe a little bit of and a little bit of pain. When you start getting into the second degree burn, that's when you start getting a blister on the area, and you've gotten through your epidermal layer, and you're getting into the dermal layer. For our third degree burns, that is, you get through the entire thickness of the skin. This can be bad. This will cause big time scarring, and this can be life threatening if it is on a large area of your body. It will be gray to cherry red or black in color, and there's typically no edema because you've destroyed most of the nerve endings and most of the blood vessels to that immediate area. So the edema is not able to create edema. And to fix this area, you typically are going to need some sort of skin grafting because those cells aren't going to be able to replace themselves. Okay, with burns, you're in critical condition if you have over 25% of your body in second degree burns, 10% of your body in third degree burns, or if it's your face or hands or feet. If you burn a whole hand with a third degree burn, you are definitely in life-threatening danger, because that is going to make you considered to have, like, I want to say you are 50% impaired if you have your hand completely burned, and you are going to have a lot of possibility for infection and dehydration and all the renal failure that's going on right there. Okay, developmental aspects with old age. So as you get older, your epidermal layer will not replace as quickly, and if you notice when you see older individuals that their skin is typically thinner, they get cuts easier. So the reason for that, like we were saying, is that the epidermal cells are dividing at a slower pace. The reason why you're going to get wrinkles and you're going to have like the hangy skin is that the subcutaneous fat and the elasticity decrease. So if there's no fat to hold it in place, all of a sudden it's hanging, and there's no elasticity, so it can't recoil and wrap around the other tissues, which also leads to decreased insulation, which will make you more likely to get cold. And we are complete for today. Thank you, everybody.